Persona, Shin Megami Tensei, Elden Ring, Final Fantasy, Diablo, Pokémon. What do they all have in common? Well, they let you summon or recruit creatures to fight on your behalf. It's one of gaming's oldest power fantasies. You don't have to throw punches yourself, you can call in something bigger and scarier to do the battling for you. Summoning monsters or allies has been a staple mechanic across genres for decades. And recently, of course, however, Nintendo decided to wrap a legal fence around that idea. They filed a US patent for a game mechanic that sounds suspiciously like summon a monster to fight for you. Naturally, the internet lost its collective mind. Rumors and rants are spreading like, our Persona summons Doom? Is Square Enix going to get sued next? Will the Nintendo ninjas descend on Atlas like a flock of Zubats? Calm down, let's break this all down calmly and factually. The patent in question isn't a blanket claim on all summoning. It's actually very specific, and the details are where things really get spicy. So we're going to fact check what Nintendo actually patented, see how it differs from games like Persona, Shin Megami Tensei, and all the other games, discuss who might actually be in trouble and who isn't, and even indulge in a bit of fun by finding loopholes so developers can, sidestep Nintendo's new rule. All with the sharp eye of an ace attorney, the enthusiasm of a Nintendo fan, and the savvy of a game developer. Well, are you ready? We're gonna summon some facts. Here are the facts. Nintendo's patent: throw, summon, and battle in a Pokéball shell. First off, what exactly did Nintendo patent? Well, the patent granted in the US in September 2025 essentially covers a very specific sequence of gameplay actions, one that Pokémon Scarlet and Violet players will find very familiar. Here's the core of it, straight from the patent description, and I quote: "In the exemplary embodiment, the player character has a ball item associated with a sub-character. By throwing the ball onto the field, the sub-character associated with that ball appears on the field." Does it sound familiar? Well, it should. It's basically describing a Pokéball mechanic. According to the patent, once your creature is summoned by the thrown object, the game checks what's at that landing spot and branches into two modes. The first mode is manual battle. If there's any enemy where you threw, your summoned creature instantly engages in battle with that enemy. Essentially, throw ball at a wild Pokemon, start a battle scene. And mode 2 is automatic or wonder mode. If there's no enemy nearby, your summoned creature doesn't disappear or return to its ball, and instead it pops out and follows you around on the field, in a kind of standby mode, waiting for something to happen. It can roam freely alongside you. If, while wandering, it encounters an enemy, it can even start fighting automatically. And Nintendo's patent spells out that the summoned ally can switch between these modes on the fly. You might manually command it to attack when a foe is present, and let it auto battle or follow when enemies aren't immediately present. It even covers features like moving your summon with a second input to target a specific enemy, chaining consecutive battles if multiple enemies are around, and capturing a character during battle. In other words, it's a comprehensive description of the modern Pokémon overworld loop, from throwing your Pokéball to starting a fight or wandering, to possibly battling more creatures in succession. To put it plainly, Nintendo just patented the entire Scarlet Violet overworld summoning system in legalese. So a picture walking through Paldea in Pokémon Scarlet and Violet, you spot a wild Lechonk and you throw a Pokéball at it. Bam! Battle begins. If you miss aim and the ball lands in the bushes with no target, your trusty Fuecoco pops out and trots along behind you for a bit, maybe auto-battling any random wild Pokemon it bumps into. And that exact gameplay loop, the throw, spawn, fight or follow, auto fight another, is now something Nintendo has locked down for the next 20 years via this patent. But they didn't stop at Pokemon either. The patent's language is broad enough that it even alludes to other examples of sub-characters being summoned. In fact, analysts noted that the patent explicitly mentions using a ball to summon, which immediately calls Pokemon to mind. It even suggests that the concept applies to any game where you throw something to bring out a helper character. Think about a Pikmin. You throw a cute little Pikmin creatures and they fight on your behalf. Nintendo's own example in the patent documentation name drops a scenario very much like Pikmin, since technically Pikmin are sub-characters you summon and command in battle. So the patent isn't just about Pokemon, it's about that whole throw to summon loop in a general sense. On paper, this sounds like more than a dry technicality. It's Nintendo planting a legal flag on one of the most recognizable mechanics in monster battling games. No wonder fans and developers alike started sweating. But here's the crucial part. Nintendo's patent does not mean every game with a summoning feature is doomed. The key is how specific this patent is. To understand why Atlus, Persona, or Sega's Shin Megami Tensei aren't going to be nuked by this, we need to compare what Nintendo patented versus how other games actually handle summoning. So let's talk about Persona and Shin Megami Tensei, the stylish JRPG series that defined summoning in their own ways long before Pokemon was a thing. These games are practically a case study in summoning with style, and naturally, Atlus fans freaked out at the patent news. Like, what does this mean? Persona can't summon Personas anymore? Are Atlus games illegal now? Forums lit up with Atlus in trouble. Clickbait started brewing. But, take a deep breath. Take a sip of water or anything. Because Nintendo's patent does not threaten Persona or Shin Megami Tensei at all, not even close. And why, you may ask? Well, because the summoning systems in those games are completely different. For example, in Persona, you're not throwing any gadgets or capsules to summon creatures in the real world, so no Pokeballs here, folks. Persona's summoning is internal, it's psychological, spiritual, sometimes straight up traumatic. That's the whole point of the Persona series. For example, in Persona 3, the characters use evokers, those iconic pistol-like devices to summon their personas. But they're not magic monster containers. An evoker basically puts the user in a momentary state of near-death terror and to force their psyche's power to manifest. It's a metaphor for controlling mortality and one's inner self. In universe, the evoker doesn't shoot out a creature, it triggers a psychological reaction. So the persona appears briefly to perform an attack and then vanishes right away. There's no little body running around the overworld, it's more like casting a spell or pulling out a part of your soul. Mechanically, in gameplay, personas are summoned within battle as commands, so they're akin to casting a magic attack or summoning an assist. They pop out for one move and then disappear. You're not exploring dungeons with a persona physically following you. It's not like a pet, it's a part of your character's being. And this is worlds apart from what Nintendo has patented. The patent is about a physical act, so to spawn an AI ally in a game world. Persona's summoning is a metaphysical act to manifest power within a battle system. No thrown object, no check for nearby enemies in an overworld, nothing of the sort. Now, Shin Megami Tensei, the mainline series from which Persona has spun off, has another style of summoning, demon negotiation and fusion, which also is in Persona. And so, since the very first Shin Megami Tensei game in 1992, the way you get demons on your side is by talking to them mid-battle. You encounter a demon or shadow, and instead of auto-fighting, you pick a talk or negotiate command. The demon might ask you philosophical questions, demand money or items, crack jokes, or even insult you. And if you answer cleverly or bribe sufficiently, they might agree to join your team. So no capturing in Pokeballs, it's more rather a conversation and a deal. and when a demon joins, it goes into your roster, and it's not walking behind you in the field. Shin Megami Tensei battles are turn-based menus, and your shadows are basically party members you summon via menu command at the start of battle, or keep you in your active party, or keep in your active party. And outside of combat, they're generally not visible following the protagonist around. Almost forgot, with a few exceptions in some spin-offs. The key differences is that Shin Megami Tensei summoning doesn't use a thrown item or real-time action. It is initiated by narrative menu. And recruiting them was through negotiation, not weakening and catching. Shin Megami Tensei also pioneered fusion, combining 2 or more recruited shadows to create new ones. A mechanic far removed from Nintendo's patented scope. So clearly from all of this, Nintendo's patent is targeting a very particular kind of summoning mechanic that Persona and Shin Megami Tensei don't use at all. As one analyst quipped, trying to apply this patent to Persona would be like enforcing skateboarding rules on ballerinas. Sure, both involve motion, but they're doing completely different things. Nintendo's claim is about throwing an item to spawn a fighter in a world and toggling its AI behavior. Persona is about triggering inner powers. Shin Megami Tensei is about making contracts with shadows. So there's no overlap at all. In fact, Atlus could even be considered to have prior art in the broad realm of monster summoning. They were recruiting and summoning shadows years before Pokémon debuted. The first Shin Megami Tensei game came out in 1992 on Super Famicom, featuring shadow negotiation and summoning. Pokémon Red Green didn't hit Japan until 1996, so if in some alternate universe Nintendo tried to claim they owned any concept of getting monsters to fight for you, Atlus's work decades ago would laugh them out of the courtroom. Thankfully, Nintendo is smart enough to not claim any of that, and their patent is much more narrower. You see, Pokemon and its patent aren't the only game in town when it comes to summoning monsters or minions. This gameplay trope shows up everywhere. JRPGs, MMORPGs, action games, strategy games, you name it. So what about all those other games that let you summon or call allies? Could Nintendo's patent hit them too? Let's look at a few examples across the genre spectrum and see how they stack up against Nintendo's patented formula. Of course, we cannot talk about monsters without talking about Monster Hunter stories. A spin-off of Monster Hunter where you befriend monsters and fight alongside them. Well, how do you get those monsters? Well, not by throwing a ball, but you find eggs in nests and you hatch them. Your monster then travels with you as a buddy. There's no throwing mechanic to summon. They're effectively always by your side or can be switched via menu. The combat is turn-based and you issue commands. No part of this involves the throw, spawn, proximity check loop. So this one, I would give it a completely safe check. Of course, we cannot talk about Pokemon without mentioning Digimon. Digimon are digital monsters usually summoned via a device or program, like a Digivice. In many Digimon RPGs, battles are either random or triggered events, and you command Digimon via menus or preset AI routines. You're not aiming a device at wild Digimon to capture them. It's often the case that you befriend or evolve them through story or by syncing with them. Again, no thrown item summoning. Of course, we also have the Final Fantasy series. Final Fantasy is famous for summons. You have Espers, Aeons, Eidolons. Typically, you select a summon from a menu in battle, a big magical creature like Ifrit, Bahamut, Shifa, you name them, and they appear in a flashy cutscene. They do some powerful attacks and then they disappear. And in some games, the summoned creature might stay and replace your party while fighting, but you still initiated it via a command, not by throwing a physical object in the environment. More recent Final Fantasy games might auto-summon under certain conditions. But again, it's triggered by game logic or menu, not a player throw action. No persistent pet wandering freely, no Pokéball equivalent. So Final Fantasy summons are unaffected. They're basically like kind of spells, narrative events. Well, what about the Dragon Quest monsters, or the Ni no Kuni ones, or the Yokai Watch? These all involve like monsters or spirits, but the method usually involves either talking to them after beating them, using a musical instrument or magic, or a device like a watch coin that's in Yokai Watch. None of them use a throw and fight real-time system. They're all menu or cutscene based summoning, so those are also safe from Nintendo's patent. And also we have the From Software games. In Elden Ring, you use items like the Spirit Calling Bell to summon spirit allies at specific spots. You're not throwing the bell, you just ring it and a spirit appears next to you. Those spirits then have their own AI to fight nearby enemies, but the key differences are that you didn't throw to a specific location, they just spawn right behind you. And another important thing is that there is no concept of toggling between battle mode and wonder mode. They pretty much only appear if there are enemies. This is similar but not identical to what Nintendo has patented. There's no thrown projectile and the spirits don't persist in no enemies around save. They just vanish after combat or when you leave the area. It's unlikely to conflict with the patent, especially since the patent emphasizes the throwable item and the two-mode behavior. I mean, I can list lots of other games too, but you get my point. To sum it up, Nintendo's patent doesn't cover the idea of summoning or having pet allies. It covers a very particular method using a thrown items to summon an autonomous ally that either instantly battles if an enemy is present or hangs around idly if not, potentially auto-fighting as it wanders. Most games' summoning systems don't work that way. They either rely on menu commands, scripted events, or different kinds of triggers that don't involve the player aiming and tossing something at a target in real time. In fact, when Nintendo Life and other outlets analyzed the patent, they noted it's basically the Scarlet Violet and Pokemon Legends Arceus mechanics written down step by step. If a game doesn't tick all the boxes of that flowchart, it likely wouldn't infringe. And as you can see, hundreds of games have summoning or ally mechanics that differ in one way or many ways. It's almost like patenting a very specific type of a key for a door. Other keys and other door mechanics aren't really covered. However, and this is a big however, just because most existing games are safe doesn't mean this patent is harmless. The real concern is for future games, especially the ones that might be inspired by Pokemon's design. Nintendo has essentially laid a minefield in the path of any would-be Pokemon-like game developers. If you're a big company like Square Enix or Atlus, you're already doing your own thing. But if you're indie or smaller studio trying to make the next monster collecting RPG and you thought, hey, fans really liked that seamless open world battling in Scarlet and Violet, let's do something similar. Well, you need to think twice. Nintendo's patent is like a giant no trespassing sign on that gameplay idea. If you step too close to replicating that throw to summon auto battle loop, and you might step on a legal landmine. And unfortunately, that's not just a hypothetical thing, we are already seeing it happen. And now it's time to address the elephant in the room. It's, Palworld. Nintendo's patent didn't emerge in a vacuum. It coincided with Nintendo and the Pokémon company going on the offensive against Palworld. And if you haven't heard of it, Palworld is an indie game that basically says, what if we have Pokemon but with guns and crafting and open world survival. It features familiar looking monster pals, and yeah, you catch them in sphere shaped capsules, especially looking like Pokeballs. You can even make them fight or and use them for factory labor. It's a weird viral game that got attention precisely for being a Pokemon clone with a chaotic twist. In mid-2024, Nintendo and the Pokémon company sued Palworld's developer Pocket Bear in Japan, seeking an injunction and around 10 million yen in damages, which is around 65,000 US dollars. The lawsuit claims that Palworld infringes several patents that Nintendo had filed earlier in 2024, which lined up with the gameplay mechanics Palworld uses. In fact, it turns out Nintendo quietly filed multiple patents in 2024 from February to July that's linked to an earlier 2021 patent, specifically to have ammo for this legal battle. Talk about planning ahead. But what does Palworld do? Originally in Palworld you would throw a Pal Sphere to summon or capture creatures, basically identical to throwing a Pokeball. Once out, your monster could fight alongside you. And that's pretty much exactly the patented sequence. Realizing the danger, the developers recently patched Palworld to change this mechanic. So now instead of throwing the capsule, you hold it out to summon the monster next to you. Which is a really small change, but legally potentially significant. They removed the throw aspect to try to dodge the patent. It's almost a direct acknowledgement of Nintendo's patent minefield. The indie developers actually tiptoeing around it by altering their game design. Now it's time to put on our attorney badges. A patent is only as strong as its ability to withstand challenges in court. On paper, Nintendo's new patent is very broad. In fact, some experts have called it overbroad and a sign of a failure in the patent systems. The core claim covers a game stored on a device where a player character can move in a virtual field. The player gives a first input, throwing an item, that spawns a sub-character at a target location. If an enemy is at that location, a manual battle mode starts, and if no enemy at that spot is, the sub-character enters an automatic mode, moving on its own in the field. The sub-character will automatically engage in battle with enemies if it encounters any enemies while in auto mode. Now the glaring issue is this isn't a brand new idea out of nowhere. The game developers have been doing spawn an allied unit that can either be controlled or left to AI for a very long time. Lawyers and industry vets were quick to point out examples. For example, StarCraft in 1989, a real-time strategy game where you produce units kind of like summoning from buildings, and they can be left idle or set to patrol guard, where they will auto-attack enemies in range. The skill and context differ, but the concept of autonomous ally units engaging foes on their own when present is there. You have Diablo 2. Summoned minions in ARPGs will follow you and attack enemies automatically if they see them. A Black and White from 2001, a game where you had a pet creature that you could throw or slap around, and it had its own AI to interact with the world. And of course, there are various MMORPGs and action games where you can spawn a pet that either idles or until combat or auto-defends you if something attacks. In patent law, these earlier examples are called prior art. If you can show that aspects of the patented mechanic were already known in older games, you can argue the patent claims are not novel or are obvious, and thus invalid. For instance, an IP expert specifically noted StarCraft as a likely piece of prior art that could invalidate at least parts of Nintendo's patent. The combination of throwing an item plus the two battle modes might be unique to Pokémon, but the individual elements, like throwing an item to summon autonomous allies, each have their own precedence. And Nintendo's counter in their lawsuit has been interesting. They apparently argued that player-made mods, like a Dark Souls 3 mod lets you toss a soul to summon an ally, don't count as prior art because they aren't official. But that's a bit of a legal stretch, as mods are a part of the publicly known art. And experts call that stance so wrong that it really actually hurts. It shows Nintendo is aware that prior art is a vulnerability and they are trying to wiggle around it. The truth is that this patent could likely be beaten in court, or at least significantly narrowed, giving enough evidence of similar mechanics in older games. Even Pokémon itself has prior art issues. For example, Pokemon Legends Arceus did the throw to initial battle thing before Scarlet Violet, though that's Nintendo's own game, so they would say it's covered. But other monster games like Yokai Watch had you toss food and items to influence or summon yokai in battle. There's a lot to pick apart. And here's the cynical twist. Nintendo doesn't actually need an airtight patent to get what it wants. It just needs a scary one. Patents are often used as deterrents. If you're a small developer and you see Nintendo got this patent, you might self-censor and avoid any mechanic that comes close to any of it, because you cannot afford a legal battle even if you believe you would win. Nintendo can also selectively enforce it to intimidate others. I mean, we already see them go after Palworld with patents that were only applied for after Palworld's release. It's a really bold strategy, and it's working so far. Palworld's developers are altering their game design and fighting in court, but the lawsuit itself likely scared off other would-be Pokemon cloners from being too direct. And one more thing to note, patents can be enforced for up to 20 years, and this one will last into the mid-2040s. Nintendo presumably wants to ensure that Pokémon and other similar Nintendo games like Pikmin remain like the only games that uses this slick throw and fight gameplay flow for a long time. They're essentially gating off a design space. To wrap this up, legally Nintendo's patent is specific and probably weak to prior art, but strategically it's powerful. It doesn't target Atlas or Square Enix, but it puts a bullseye on anyone trying to imitate Pokemon too closely. It's one more weapon in Nintendo's infamous arsenal of IP protection. And here's the real question: do patents protect creativity or actually choke it? Well, in theory, they reward innovation. In practice, especially in gaming, they often fence off ideas like their private property. The developers who actually push genres forward aren't the ones in skyscrapers. They are the indies working out of bedrooms and small studios. When a giant like Nintendo patents something as broad as how you summon monsters, it basically tells smaller devs that if you get too close to it, you will see them in court. And we've seen this before. Warner Bros. Patented the Nemesis system from Shadow of Mordor. It was groundbreaking, but since 2014, no one's touched it because, not because no one has touched it, but because Warner Bros. Locked it behind legal glass until 2035. And imagine if someone had patented jumping on enemies after Mario. Platformers would have died in the 80s. And Nintendo's move isn't really evil, well, kinda scummy, but not evil. I mean, every big studio protects its turf, but it's a dangerous precedent. This kind of overreach freezes innovation exactly where it's born, among indie developers with fresh ideas and ramen budgets. And honestly, it's really wild seeing Nintendo, the same company that builds its empire on remixing other people's ideas, now slamming the door shut behind them. They were the innovators once, the rebels, the ones coloring outside the lines. Now they are guarding the crayons and kind of overreacting. I mean, it's not like Palworld will take over the whole, the monster genre and kill off Pokemon. I mean, not at all. But I get it. It's business. But it still stinks when the people who taught us to imagine things start to patent imagination itself. So yeah, maybe this patent won't kill creativity, but it definitely scares it, and that's the real loss, not in court but in the ideas we will never see. And that's it for today. Anyway, stay creative, stay curious, and if you're a developer, maybe just don't throw any suspicious looking Pokeballs. Maybe consider watching one of these videos, and I will catch you in the next one. Bye bye.